Welcome back and enjoy the story. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Mrs. Helen Alden stood before the clearance rack at Belmont's boutique, her weathered fingers trembling slightly as they touched a navy blouse. The fabric felt smooth. Against her calloused hands, hands that had written thousands of encouraging notes, graded countless papers, and wiped away more tears than she could remember. The store's marble floors gleamed beneath her worn sneakers, a stark contrast to the scuffed linoleum of Lincoln Elementary, where she'd spent the last 35 years teaching. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured rainbows across the walls, illuminating mannequins dressed in clothes that cost more than her monthly rent. She needed this blouse, something respectable for Monday's parent-teacher conferences, but standing here felt like trespassing in a world that wasn't meant for people like her. The sharp click of heels against marble announced the approach of trouble before Mrs. Alden even looked up. A young woman in stilettos and a pencil skirt strode over, her perfectly contoured face wearing an expression of practiced disdain. "Excuse me," the saleswoman said, her voice cutting through the boutique's soft jazz music like glass through silk. "This section isn't for returns." Mrs. Alden blinked in confusion. "I'm not returning anything. I'm shopping for a blouse." The woman's eyes traveled over Mrs. Alden's faded cardigan, her mended purse, her sensible shoes. "We've had issues before with people who clearly don't intend to buy." She emphasized the word people as if it tasted bitter. "Please don't handle the merchandise unless you're a serious customer." Heat crept up Mrs. Alden's neck as whispers started among the other sales associates. One laughed behind her hand, saying, "Did someone forget to lock the charity shop entrance?" Another added, "Maybe she's lost." Their words stabbed like tiny needles, each one finding its mark. Mrs. Alden had faced difficult parents, hostile administrators, and budget cuts that left her buying classroom supplies with her own money, but this casual cruelty felt different. Here she wasn't Mrs. Alden, the teacher who'd helped hundreds of children learn to read, who'd stayed late tutoring struggling students, who'd celebrated every small victory. Here she was just a poorly dressed woman in a wealthy store. She carefully placed the blouse back on the rack, her hands shaking with a mixture of anger and shame. The saleswoman smiled coldly. "You know, there's a nice thrift store downtown on 5th Street. That might be more suitable for your budget." The other employees giggled, emboldened by their supervisor's meanness. "Or maybe the school supply. Store has what you need," one added with mock helpfulness. Mrs. Alden felt tears threatening to spill. In all her years of teaching, she'd learned that hurt children often hurt others. But these weren't children. They were adults who should know better. She clutched her purse tighter, its worn strap digging into her shoulder like an anchor. "I'm sorry for bothering you," she whispered, turning toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet store as employees watched her retreat. Just as Mrs. Alden reached the door, it chimed softly as someone entered. She didn't look back, too focused on getting out before the tears fell. But behind her, she heard gasps and the rustle of clothing as the staff suddenly straightened. "Good afternoon, sir," came the saleswoman's voice, now dripping with artificial sweetness. "Welcome to Belmont's. How can I help you today?" Mrs. Alden paused with her hand on the door handle, something familiar about the voice that had spoken. When she finally turned, she saw a tall young man in an expensive suit, his shoes reflecting the boutique's lights. But it was his eyes, warm and kind, that made her breath catch. Those were eyes she recognized even though she'd last seen them in a 6th-grade classroom 15 years ago. "Mrs. Alden?" The man's voice cracked with disbelief. "Is that really you?" She squinted, trying to place the face that had grown handsome and successful. "It's me, Jacob Reyes. Room 12. You taught me how to read the outsiders when everyone else had given up on me." The saleswoman's eyes widened as understanding dawned. This wasn't just any customer. This was someone important, someone rich. And he knew the woman they'd just humiliated. Jacob's expression darkened as he took in the scene, Mrs. Alden standing by the door with tears in her eyes, the staff looking uncomfortable and guilty. "Did someone upset you, Mrs. Alden?" His voice carried a dangerous edge that made the saleswoman step back. "Mrs. Alden," Jacob said, his voice growing stronger and more confident with each word, "do these people know who you are? Do they understand What you've done? He turned to face the saleswoman, who now looked pale. This woman saved my life when I couldn't read past a second grade level in 6th grade, when my father left and my mother worked 3 jobs just to keep us fed. Mrs. Alden stayed after school with me. She used her own money to buy me books. She made me believe I could be more than everyone said I was. The boutique fell silent except for the soft music, which now seemed jarringly cheerful. Jacob reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, handing it to the stunned saleswoman. Jacob Reyes, CEO, Ferv Reyes Technologies. Maybe you've heard of it? The assistant farthest from them dropped the clothes she'd been folding. Oh my God, she whispered. Reyes Technologies. They're worth billions. The saleswoman stared at the business card as if it might bite her. Jacob continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the store. Last month, our company was featured on the cover of Tech Weekly. We're launching 3 new products this quarter, and I'm about to close a deal with Microsoft. He took Mrs. Alden's hand gently. And none of it would exist if not for this incredible woman. She saw potential in a scared, angry kid when no one else did. Mrs. Alden wiped her eyes, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. Jacob, you don't need to— Yes, I do, he interrupted firmly. You deserve every bit of respect and more. Mrs. Alden, Jacob announced loud enough for the entire store to hear, you're not leaving empty-handed. Whatever you want, whatever you need, it's yours. Consider it a small payment on a debt I can never fully repay. He turned to the store manager, who had appeared as if by magic once Jacob's identity became clear. I want to open an account for Mrs. Alden, no limits. The manager nodded eagerly, sweat beading on his forehead. Of course, Mr. Reyes, we'd be honored. The same saleswoman who had been so cruel now rushed forward, her demeanor completely transformed. Mrs. Alden, please, let me show you our finest selections. We have some beautiful pieces that would look lovely on you. Mrs. Alden looked at the woman who had humiliated her, then at Jacob, then back again. For a moment the boutique held its breath. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but carried the weight of years of teaching troubled children. Young lady, she said to the saleswoman, in my classroom I always taught my students that how we treat others, especially when we think no one important is watching, reveals our true character. The woman's face crumpled. I've been teaching for 35 years, and I've learned that kindness costs nothing but is worth everything. You chose to be unkind to someone you deemed unworthy. That says far more about you than it does about— Hey, Jacob squeezed Mrs. Alden's hand supportively. She's right, he said. Mrs. Alden once told our class that respect isn't something you give, based on what someone can do for you. It's something you give because it's right. He looked around the store, meeting each employee's eyes. I started a scholarship program. Last year, maybe we need to add an ethics course requirement. The saleswoman was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, she choked out. You're right. There's no excuse for how I treated you. Mrs. Alden nodded slowly. Her apology accepted, dear. We all make mistakes. The question is what we do next. 30 minutes later, Mrs. Alden emerged from the fitting room wearing a beautiful blouse that made her feel confident and dignified. Jacob sat in a nearby chair, watching with obvious pride as the same staff members who had mocked her now treated her like royalty. You know, Mrs. Alden told him as she admired herself in the 3-way mirror, I came here feeling invisible, forgotten. But you've reminded me that the seeds we plant as teachers never stop growing. Jacob stood and hugged her. You saved me, Mrs. Alden. You took a kid who couldn't read, who had no hope, and you made him believe in himself. This is nothing compared to what you gave me. Around them, the boutique staff wrapped her other selections in tissue paper with careful attention. As they prepared to leave, the store manager approached one final time. Mrs. Alden, on behalf of Belmont's, I want to formally apologize. You will always be welcome here, and we hope you'll accept a small token of our regret for today's misunderstanding. He handed her a certificate. Free lifetime tailoring services for any purchases you make here. Mrs. Alden accepted it graciously, but looked at the young saleswoman who had been so cruel earlier. Instead of a lifetime offer, she suggested, why don't you use that budget for training your staff about treating all customers with dignity? It would be a better investment. Standing outside Belmont's boutique, Mrs. Alden and Jacob watched the sunset paint Chicago's skyline in shades of gold and pink. "You know what the best part is?" Jacob asked. "Your student, Maria Gonzalez, remember her? She's a doctor now, and Tommy Wilson? He's a teacher just like you. We all stayed in touch over the years, and we all remember you." Mrs. Alden's eyes filled with tears again, but these were different. Tears. "You mean the world to me, Jacob. All of you do," he grinned. "We know. That's why I'm naming the new lab at Reyes Technologies after you, the Helen Alden Innovation Center. It'll inspire future generations, just like you inspired us." Mrs. Alden returned to her small apartment that evening, not just with a new blouse, but with something far more precious, the knowledge that her life's work had mattered. She sat at her kitchen table, the boutique bag beside her, and opened the laptop her former students had given her last Christmas. There was an email from Jacob. "Dear Mrs. Alden, thank you for today. I've started a foundation in your honor, and we want you to be the first recipient. It's called the Teachers Who Change Lives Foundation. Check your bank account. Love, Jacob, the kid who couldn't read." When she checked, her breath caught. He had deposited enough money to ensure she'd never want for anything again, but more importantly, he had given her the gift of knowing that her legacy would live on. As she prepared for bed, Mrs. Alden smiled, thinking about Monday's parent-teacher conferences. She'd have a new blouse to wear, yes, but more importantly, she'd have renewed faith in the power of kindness and the lasting impact of believing in others. The small seeds she'd planted with love had indeed grown into mighty oaks of gratitude. Congratulations, type 7 in the comments. So I know you stayed with me until the end. Leave a like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. See you.